All right, our friend Sean Campbell is joining us, Montreal Alouettes play-by-play voice, avid golfer. We found out the last time he was here in August in our studio, so 3 avid golfers. Are you still golfing out there in Montreal? Can you make us jealous at all?
I wish I could say yes. But that is not the case. I have not picked up the clubs in like a month, and that's probably the Alouettes' fault because they've been taking up most of my weekends the last few weeks because it's just been way too busy. My busy months are October, November, so it just once mid-September hits, even if the weather's nice, it's hard to get 4 or 5 hours to get out there. So no, unfortunately, I have not picked up the clubs in a while, and I think it'll be maybe April, May, if I'm lucky.
Yeah. Well, we're all retired unless we get away in the winter for sure. That game against Winnipeg last weekend in the semi, was it ever in doubt for you calling the game? Like, I know Winnipeg kind of comes, and Luke Mullender woke up from a nap and he's like, what am I watching here? These highlights? But was it ever in doubt for you in the booth?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think that the doubt was because it was the Bombers, and the Bombers are just chock full of veterans. And the veterans, they went into halftime and they got, they probably had to reset a little bit. And when you have a team led by Zach Caleros and you have a team led by Brady Oliveira, you're going to be able to reset. And they were able to do that. And you have interceptions early in the half, the fumble, the first 2 possessions. I think it showed a lot of from the Alouettes that they were able to reset after that first 6 minutes of the third quarter. But I'll say at one moment, it's like, what is happening here? Because the Alouettes were falling apart, but they just have too many good players for them to completely fall apart. I thought Jason Moss put it perfectly. That game was exactly how their season went. Great start, disappeared a little bit in the middle, but finished strong. So I think that was just a display that the Alouettes were able to reset mid-game to get back to where they were to take advantage, because they were the better team. They just fell asleep a little bit like Luke Mullender did.
Oakman suspended. Neil Thorpe always going to find a way going into Hamilton. Any worry there?
I think that everybody was talking about what the big issue was not only that Oakman was suspended, is that Mustafa Johnson's been banged up ever since that game in Winnipeg. And that game in Winnipeg, Lawal Ugwak and Johnson got hurt in the second quarter, did not play in the second half, and the worry was, will they play? So then they go in against the Bombers in the East semifinal. No Johnson, Oakman suspended. Who's Corey Roberson? Well, Corey Roberson probably had one of the biggest plays of the game, forcing the fumble on Brady Oliveira. Yeah. And he's been sitting there on the practice roster. He got a couple games in this year, and the team just said, we believe in him, and we believe that he's going to have a good opportunity. So, yeah, they had to move on from Sean Oakman just like that out of nowhere. Talking to Danny Machocha, he said, we kind of felt like this was coming because we got wind of this, and we felt like, we're going to have to let him go. So they kind of knew a couple days. It wasn't like as we found out a day before. Mm-hmm. I think he had wind of this after the investigation, knowing that it was coming. But the good news is you're getting light participation from Mustafa Johnson at practice this week. So that's going to be a big factor up against the Ticats getting him in. But Noel Thorpe believes in this defense, even if they're missing 2 of their big weapons right in the middle. So they'll go 3-4. They'll move Ugwak into the middle. They'll make some adjustments.
On the other side of the ball, this might be the most obvious question, but do you think there's still people out there that don't think Davis Alexander can lead this team to a Grey Cup?
Who are they?
That's what I mean. Do you think there's anybody left? Like, do you think that he's silenced everybody and that's it? It's
I don't know who you are. I don't know what he can do. Maybe he has to win one to prove it. I have this long-standing, on my show, because we talk hockey all the time. I will never predict the Buffalo Sabres to make the playoffs until they make the playoffs. Like, I will never believe in them, never in my life, until they actually win the playoffs. And if they go in the playoffs, I'll never pick them to win the Stanley Cup. Maybe there's people like me that feel that way, but I don't know who can watch what Davis Alexander has done this year, what he's done last year. And I know it's limited. It's a limited amount of games, but he's got everything you want in a starting quarterback in the CFL. And he just has gone out there game after game and proven it. And even when he throws an interception, he bounces back. Even when he's yakking and distracted by the opposition and trash talking, he still goes out there and performs. And yes, he's young and he's still got a lot to learn, but there's too many weapons there for anybody not to believe that he could lead the Owls to the Grey Cup. It's not going to be easy. You have to go into Hamilton, then you have to go into Winnipeg against either BC or Saskatchewan, but he's got all the tools. I don't see how anybody doesn't believe he doesn't have the tools.
I never have gotten, Harry, even back to our days, early 2000s and working on Global, and people are like, oh, he's cocky. No, he's confident. No, he's cocky. No, why can't it just be the same thing? Who cares? Really? That's the word that I heard, and I was listening this week to a few, and it's like, well, he's cocky. And then someone's like, no, he's confident. Really, who cares? Go and get the job done and walk however you want to walk. Be comfortable in your own skin. Sean, who does he remind you of, if anybody, from a CFL quarterback over the years? Is he a young Bo Levi Mitchell? Is he got a little bit of Henry Burris in him? Like, who would he remind you of, Sean?
That's a good question. Now you got me thinking. And I the cocky, confident, I like that comparison, but I just call it he's got a lot of bravado. He just
semantics.
It's however you want to. He's got a lot of bravado. I've talked to him many times. He is humble. He knows where he came from, but when he hits that field, he has to act a certain way. And maybe it's because he's an undersized quarterback that other teams never believed in. You have to be able to walk up and believe in yourself when you get out there. And there's a confidence as a quarterback when you run that offense. You can't have anybody that walks into a huddle that second guesses themselves. I think back to Alouettes quarterbacks, and he's definitely not AC. Like AC carried himself completely different, which is so weird because he's his coach. And then if I'm going across the CFL, I like your young Bo Levi Mitchell, but waiting in the wings a little bit. He was a third string there in Calgary. It was the same thing. Davis Alexander waited in the wings before he got that opportunity. Then you saw him once. You're like, well, he's got to be the starter. And that's even what the general manager did. I think there's a little bit, not the style of play, but I feel Nathan Rourke carries himself that way a little bit with, he's got a little bit in your face and I'm the guy. I think Nathan Rourke had to, earn that because Vernon Adams Jr. has always had that confidence. There's another very confident quarterback, Vernon Adams Jr., undersized guy that kind of makes of it by the way that he performs. He's not a barker, though. Vernon Adams Jr. is not a barker like Davis Alexander is. He might be one of one too, right? We're still learning about who he is and what he's able to do. But I'll tell you, that confidence or bravado or cockiness, he lets it out there on. And I'm watching. You go through the highlights here. A lot of these balls that he was throwing, the one to Mac, the one down the field, that's against the wind. This guy is he's got the arms and the arm strength, and he absolutely loves throwing darts down the field, and he doesn't care if he's with the wind or against the wind.
If anything is his downfall, what is it? What's his Achilles heel, if you will? What is going to be his undoing?
And it'll be his confidence, because I've seen him, and when he came back from injury the first time, in the first half, I'm trying to think of the game, he had 3 incompletions. They were all balls that were 40 yards down the field, and it wasn't the play that was called. He just felt, he's like, I'm going to go and make a play. And they were incomplete. They weren't interceptions, but those could turn interceptions. Those could be getting away from the game plan. He spoke about how there was a couple plays against Winnipeg that he got away from the game plan. He messed up the call in the huddle, maybe because he's too overhyped and too excited after a play. Jason Moss is calm, sending him in the play, and then he's like, misses half of it, and then he just calls whatever he wants to call. That might be a little bit his downfall on that. And the other aspect is, I know we had a rushing touchdown from 3 yards out, but that was just walking in. Prior to his hamstring injury, his running was explosive. He was able to make plays when he was in the pocket to get to the edge. He has been very limited in his running. He had one big run almost every game, but in the past it was maybe 3 or 4 big runs that he was able to get a first down. Now it's 1 a game. That's it. So his ability to move since the hamstring injury, or his ability to say, I'm not going to run because I'm scared I'm going to pull it, a week before the Grey Cup, that might be something that limits him against Hamilton.
I think I read this. Is this his first live look at the Tiger Cats and vice versa?
It's the Tiger Cats' first look at Davis Alexander, yes.
Okay. Who has the upper hand there? Him or them?
Him.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at the Ticats defense and I'm looking at Davis Alexander, I think Davis Alexander doesn't care who he's up against. Yes, he's got to read the defense. Yes, he has to pre-scout. Yes, he has to coach. But I don't think he really cares. And I think that the Ticats have to care about Davis Alexander or what he can do in that pocket. Yes, they got a pre-scout for Stevie Scott, who's kind of come out of nowhere. He was on the practice roster to start. They had Sean Thomas Earlington, then they went to Travis Tice, and now they're at Stevie Scott. But I would say the bigger issue will be for the Ticats to scout Davis Alexander. You could look at the clips, you could try and break down what the Alouettes do, but the game plan that Jason Moss puts forward is based around what Davis Alexander will be able to do and read.
What do you expect Thorpe to dial up against Bo Levi in that Hamilton offense?
I think he wants to make sure that they're going to try and turn to the run game. But even that run game, we call it a run game, but it's going to be a check down game. That's what the Ticats do. I don't know how much they're going to blitz him. You see in the CFL, you blitz a veteran quarterback, they kind of know how to read. They know where the blitz is coming. They're going to be able to find that guy. So in past, the Owls, they see a young quarterback, and you'll see zero blitz almost on every play. They're like, we're going to force you to throw the ball and make a decision. You are going to have to beat us. But with Bo Levi Mitchell, I don't know if Noel Thorpe will have confidence. He'll throw a blitz. They'll throw an extra guy, a 5 guy. Maybe they'll send in a DB every now and then to try and surprise them. But I wouldn't be shocked to see 3, max 4-man rush. And the receivers are going to have to beat the Owls DBs. That's what I see Noel Thorpe doing. I don't know. I trust me, I have not broken into his mind. It is a tough mind because he's probably thinking that's what they're thinking. So I'm going to do this. Right. There could be a whole way here. I don't have any inside knowledge of what they're going to do, but watching Noel Thorpe and the way that he does, I know that he sometimes holds back against veteran quarterbacks because they have that ability to throw down the field and they are able, to read the blitzes a lot better than the younger ones.
I expect a tight game, but I, in the back of my head here, the gambler in me, I'm like 3 points. I can see this getting away quickly from Hamilton.
There's a couple factors. Offense, maybe they go toe to toe. Maybe each offense puts up 3 touchdowns. They go toe-to-toe, 3 touchdowns, 2 field goals each. Okay, let's hand the offenses 27 points each because they can do that. I think that, there's a factor that James Letcher Jr. is healthy and he's back. He has not returned a kick, but the amount of kicks that he returns in timely fashion, like the Owls are out of a game and then next thing you know, he takes a punt and he'll return it 50 yards. Instead of starting at their own 15, the Alouettes are starting at midfield. That changes everything. And the Owls have this uncanny ability defensively to find that football, scoop and score, pick 6. Now, they had less of them this year, but the opportunities were there. You just go back a couple weeks ago. Kebianento had one in his hands, and I can't believe he didn't bring that one in. But those, I could see the game being turned where it might be an extra 7 in one direction because of a special teams or a defensive touchdown.
Okay. Well, we have you here. We have to ask the voice of the Montreal Canadiens some Habs questions, if that's okay. You're juggling both right now. Who's the number 1 goalie in Montreal?
The number 1 goalie is, I don't know, Dopinbo. I did. They're kind of. I was trying to put them together. It's Dobesh right now, I would say, but Montebo just got 2 straight starts. He split that one. He had a little bit of a rough one around Philadelphia in the first period, but he battled back and made some big saves in overtime to get him that point. They lose in a shootout. I believe it's still Montebo. Dobesh is going to get the start. this week in New Jersey. That's a good start. He might get Utah. He might get back-to-back. Right now, it's kind of a 50-50. And you know why it's a 50-50? Because before every game, the coach is going to be asked who's starting. That's how you know you don't have a number one. And that's why maybe you feel like you have two number ones. But if the coach is getting asked before every game who's starting, then you know that you don't really have a number one anymore. So it's they'll battle back and forth. We'll see who comes out on top. But right now, the Habs are top of the Eastern Conference at 19 points, so they're feeling good. So, you think Montembeault's going to probably come back to where he was, and Dobesh is probably going to come back to earth a little bit. And they'll probably meet in the middle.
What's more surprising, the overall start or that road record?
I think it's the overall start, but that's what they wanted in training camp. That was the message from Marty St. Louis. Is last year we had a really bad start, and at the end of November they were in last place, and they were able to claw their way all the way back into a playoff spot, which is incredible because they had a December run where they beat Florida, Colorado, Tampa Bay, and Dallas. And then you were like, how did you beat all these teams when you never win on this crazy Christmas road trip? But they were able to do that. They didn't want to put themselves in that spot. And they're almost in a spot where it's so weird, 13 games a season. If they go 500 for the rest of the season, they'll probably be in a playoff spot. And yes, point. They're taking... There's a lot of close games, though. Like every game. I think there's been the win on Detroit where they won 5-1 on the road. Other than that, everything's been a one-goal game. There's a couple 2-goal games, but there was an empty net in there. Everything's so close. They're winning games in overtime. They're losing games in shootout. So they just have a great battle in every single game. So that's why they do well on the road, because of how well they battle. But probably the start that they're on top, but it's so close in the Eastern Conference. You could lose 2 games and be out of the playoffs.
Okay, the professor sent in a couple of questions I got to ask you, a big Habs fan. He said, so the last time the same team won the Calder Rookie of the Year twice in a row was Boston in 67 with Orr and 68 with Sanderson. Last year, Habs D-man Lane Hudson won the award. Do you think winger Ivan Demidov will win the Calder for Montreal again this year?
Well, I think Matthew Schaefer has a lot to say about that.
Yeah.
With the start that he's put in. We saw it last year with Lane Hudson. A lot of voters put a little bit of stock on the young defenseman because it's a harder position.
Yeah.
And not only that he's a young defenseman, he's an 18-year-old defenseman. He's a teenage defenseman. Lane Hudson won as a young defenseman, but he was a 20-year-old defenseman, and he won that. So now you have Schaefer at 18. Now, how long will he be able to keep that up? I'm not sure. You think he's going to hit a wall a little bit with the minutes that he's playing, and he's not on a great team. Demidov, however, is in a better situation, and he might be picking up 70 to 80 points, and you pick up 80 points as a rookie. Just go back over the last 20 years. The last player to do that was Barzal with 85, and then if you get close to 90, that's almost unheard of. As a rookie, you may have to lean that, but there's a good chance Demidov is a rookie. And here's the thing. Habs fans know that there's more coming down the pipeline. Habs fans have been talking about winning the Calder with Hudson, Demidov, and then maybe next year, Michael Hage. And then in 2 years, Jacob Fowler, the goaltender, will be ready to go as he's been in there. So the closet's stocked full of potential rookies. And by the way, there's this other Russian kid ripping it up in the KHL at 18 years old, Zakarski, and he's getting a point a game at 18 years old. So watch out for him. So the Habs have done some pretty good drafting lately.
They have. Okay, last one from the professor who says, I wanted to know what's the difference between Montreal this year compared to last.
Hockey-wise, you have the youngest team in the NHL, but with that much more experience. So it's weird. They're actually younger than they were last year. So last year, they were the youngest team ever to make the playoffs, and they got younger this year, but they have all that experience that they went through last year. So now that's a big difference. And if you look at the start of the season, last year they had a 20% power play that was good for 20th in the league. They're over 30% now, and possibly could be a top 5 power play in the league. That'll be a huge difference.
All right. Well, you are a busy guy. So we caught you at a good time. Hopefully today some downtime. Too bad about the golfing. And then next week we might have to do this again as we prepare for the Grey Cup. You'll be in Winnipeg. We'll have to catch up.
Well, that's if the Owls win. If the Owls don't win, I'll be back home in my office.
Yeah, maybe
you can call me anyways.
Maybe you can get around in. Yeah. All right, Sean. Thanks, man.
Hey, have a good one.